All right, everybody. Welcome to the Scho-Zone. I am your host, Ryan Schofield. Thank you for tuning in on a lovely Monday afternoon, the day after Father's Day. If you are new to the show, bear with me for a few more minutes. It takes me a minute or two to get rolling. And then once I do, I like to think it's worth your while. And if you're a continued listener, there's a couple of yous out there. Appreciate you stopping by and all the support that you've been giving me. It does not go unnoticed. So, yeah, I don't do any production value on this show. It's really just all about the spoken words that I have and the thoughts that I share. That's kind of the meat, the substance of the show. If you want something that looks, I'm not putting lipstick on a pig here, okay? This is the pig as ugly as can possibly be, but here it goes. The topic of my show today, I never thought in a million years I'd ever be discussing, but I'm going to be discussing the WNBA and the discourse around it. And really, that doesn't mean it's a conversation about the WNBA. Let's just call the WNBA conversation what it really is. It's just a conversation about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. And there's a bunch of reasons why it's as popular as it is, and I don't think that any of them are right. And I'm going to try to remove some of those reasons from there as to why I think some of the things I think about this whole. It's a spectacle now. Let's just call it what it is. It's a spectacle. It is, again, I'm going to start with this, is that this is normally, as you can tell by the little theme background and even the attire of mine and the little prop here, this is mostly I talk baseball. And even more particularly, I talk about the St. Louis Cardinals. And I talk a little bit more about Shohei Ohtani and gambling related things. Why? I like to talk about things that I feel very informed on and that I can possibly offer some insight on that is a little bit better than the average guy, because why the fuck else would you be listening to me? I will preface this by saying I do not watch the WNBA, but recently I have become inundated with more WNBA content anywhere I go or anywhere I listen than I really ever signed up for, to the point where you just can't avoid it. I do get the reasons, this is just the way that society is now. I don't do any show prep, so that's probably to my own detriment. I loosely toss ideas out of my head, but whatever gets recorded when I do this is just what comes out, and I have to live with it. I kind of like it that way, because too many times when I'm watching these types of shows or listening to other people that are much better at what they do than I do, I can tell that it's a written, crafted take. These have been workshopped in my head a little bit, but what comes out of here is how it comes out. So, WNBA, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. The whole thing goes about yesterday where we got way too many people pouring gasoline on it really should just be a small fire. Let's just call it what it is. It's not even a campfire. There's many people that gain a lot out of this. Unfortunately, most people now, I don't think, watch or really pay as much attention to legacy media as they do. Many people use outlets just like this one, not something with 43 subscribers, but if you can get me a couple more, that'd be great. That to use as a credible news source. But there are people that are, I see the stuff that gets retweeted out there. They're blue check mark accounts that have been built up followings on engagement bait. And now people think that they actually are somewhat credible. A lot of the things that get mentioned here do not get discussed on what you consider to be credible legacy media, although I feel like there's a little bit of an oxymoron in the idea of legacy media being credible. But anyways, it's not anybody that's so accomplished. It's why when you have Bill Maher talking to Charlemagne the God, you watch basically me versus Mike Tyson in a sparring match. That's about how well that one went down. Most of this conversation is had through the lens of race and gender. And you can really remove a lot of this out of here, and it still makes all the much sense of this one. Again, I will start out here in saying I was nothing more than a good high school athlete. Okay. I was a good lacrosse player, not meant to be a college player. I'm fucking 5'7", okay? And I weighed about 150 pounds when I graduated high school, and I was trying to play Division III college lacrosse. I cared more about my partying and socializing, and probably a regret in my life that I'll have to live with, but so be it. That's just how it worked out for me. But I've always been involved in sports, and I've always been competitive. I understand the culture of how things work. My father worked in an athletic department growing up. So yeah, I grew up around in locker rooms and stuff like that. I like to think that the area which I come from, which has had some successful teams, I've seen how things work. I'm also from a diverse area. I do understand the dynamics between certain races that exist. Okay. It's not, if you want to Google my lovely hometown of Troy, New York, it's doing wonderful things these days. I don't say this because most people, when I do this, I just get looked at as that, oh, you're just a white guy. What the fuck do you know? I hate that I even had to just say that, but it's true. Probably shouldn't have my company logo ever popping up in any of this, but fuck it, who cares? The idea being maybe one day I could draw some money from this and not have to go there. But so we have the whole resentment thing. Let's just be real here, okay? If you've ever played sports, I'm going to speak about this from the existing WNBA players. If you've ever been, I'll just speak from being an upperclassman playing again. I hate that this sounds so pathetic. I'm comparing my high school lacrosse playing to actual professional sports. But when you're, say, like a senior and you're kind of, you're on watch lists, as far as for local area stuff. When you find out that there's some sophomore that's lighting up the scoreboard on there, you're not gonna, when you play that guy, not gonna want to let him run, have his way with you, and you're probably going to want to show him, hey, like let's see how you can handle playing with the big boys kind of thing. That's an attitude, and I feel like that is just universal. That is not isolated to gender. I feel like that's just the way the competitive nature goes. Nobody older wants to think that anybody younger is better than them. Conversely, nobody younger wants to think that anybody older is better than them. People, and especially athletes who play at a high level, are very full of pride. Competitive nature always brings upon feistiness. One thing I go on with this is that I was in a little bit of a back and forth with a guy from Indianapolis who, it just kills me, where I actually saw this where someone said, Caitlyn has done no wrong. She doesn't deserve any of this. All right, she hasn't done anything wrong in the sense that she's not a criminal or anything like that. I'm sure she's a nice girl in person and everything like that. Most really good athletes are not very fun to deal with on the field of play. And I would kind of just point out the example of that, how her father had to scold her from the stands during March Madness because of the way that she works the refs. Most times when somebody sees somebody who has that entitled sense to themselves, or there's nothing worse than when you're playing sports with somebody who is just as dirty as you are, but always never gets caught doing anything, or just always plays the, oh, what did I do? What did I do? I kind of made the comparison to her of Reggie Miller because of the way that she gets under my skin just watching her a little bit. I don't like people that are floppers. I don't like people that work refs. And that's not just, look at the conversations around Luka Doncic. Okay. It's not exactly even isolated to just females in this course. The same conversations that are had about Luka Doncic bitching to refs are the same conversations had about LeBron James bitching to refs. Those have nothing to do with race on there. Unfortunately, in this world, we do have people there is a little too much in amongst athletes, that they have to create false adversity. I mean, one of the best parts about watching the Last Dance with Michael Jordan was him talking about how he made up a story about a guy saying something to him and then annihilated him the next day just based off of the made up story they have. Athletes have to have the me against the world mentality sometimes, or within a team aspect, us against the world. Again, I'm trying to remove as much of this as trying to talk about field of play stuff. Now, of course, though, because it's covered and it's almost like, as it said before, there used to be the expression in media, I'm sure it still exists, but if it bleeds, it leads. Why we always get bad news at the forefront of news. I'm sure that the people that actually study this stuff, I'm sure that there's a lot more engagement and a lot more reactions that go through when you do get into the race topics, or you do get into the gender topics. I really choose to stay the fuck out of them because if this makes me an evil person, then so be it. I'm really mostly focused on myself. How I can be the best version of myself is my best way of contributing to society, I would like to think. And if everybody kind of had that attitude, sometimes the best version of yourself is being helpful to others. Okay. That stuff will come in line, but focus on yourself first. That does not mean you against the world necessarily, but focus on yourself, and then you can be better for everybody else. That's kind of how I have looked at the way that my life has gone in the past few years. I realize I'm just kind of ranting and just doing a little bit of word salad here, but this is, I'll get somewhere. I'll get fired on some point here. Let me just get a little more of my coffee. All right. So We have today now. It's been a minefield. Again, I go on to my Twitter accounts looking to, or social media, looking to maybe get some random stats about baseball. Maybe a fan of a team that I'm not really too close with is somehow ended up on my For You feed. I do find good stuff there. I am very quick to say one of my best friends in the fucking world now is a guy who I started chatting St. Louis Cardinal stuff with. And then eventually one day we reached out and chatted with each other. That was, wow, you're from fucking St. Louis and I'm from fucking upstate New York, and yet we have some things in common. Why don't we meet at a Cardinals game sometime? I just had a friend that just met up with a bunch of Atlanta Braves fans. There are some good benefits that can come from the tools we have in place. But unfortunately, we just can't have nice things sometimes. Everything on there is just, and the worst is I've realized when you get involved in any of these conversations, is that I always think back to George Carlin with think of how dumb the average person is and realize that half of people are dumber than that. Many times when you are engaging with people on social media, don't even understand what you said. And then they're arguing to things that they think that you said, and they're really just arguing with themselves. I find it to be very hilarious. I've realized that I probably have the worst profile picture to ever weigh in on any of these topics. Not that I care to, just every now and again, I just want to point out a quick question. One that I have, because again, now that there's all these new eyeballs on the WNBA, there's a lot of resistance to even the new eyeballs being there. It's not enough that we want to make, people are interested now. And now that they're being led to feel bad about being interested in the WNBA. I know that I said I wanted to try and avoid the topics of race and gender, but unfortunately, they just have to keep coming up in this. But I think the greatest tweet I saw on the matter was, before, if you didn't watch the WNBA, it made you a sexist. Now, if you watch the WNBA, it's because you're a racist. This was a black man that said this, and then he tagged it with the greatest line that just says, brilliant marketing strategy. Exactly. Like that's exactly what it is. It almost appears to me like the WNBA and the whole scene around it seems like that they did enjoy this kind of, I think that they kind of looked at it as an exclusive club that they just wanted to have better amenities for and not really welcome more people into. That's kind of the way it feels a little bit to me. I mean, you could tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, I know how that goes. It's like I'm not perfect by any stretch of the means. I know that I hate where, say, me and my friends really, really like a TV show or a movie, and we quote it amongst each other because it's unknown and it's our little thing. And then all of a sudden it becomes popular. And we're like, oh, fuck, now everybody likes it. I get that shit. I don't know if that's 100% what happens, though. But I will say that this is one pleasant thing that I have realized about the WNBA, and something I think that does hurt it a little bit, or is a great little indicator. We'll see how well this is really being seen elsewhere, because we're all just in America right now on the WNBA. I will say this, I've seen games before in the past. It's not that I actively always turn it off, but sometimes I will happen to watch it. It is not my fault if something does not interest me. Okay, I can go ahead and say that. I will say, in watching the clips, because again, I have still not watched a single WNBA game, and we'll get into that in a second. I am noticing that the level of play is better than I don't want to say expected, but that I remember it to be. And that does make sense. I think the WNBA started around the late 90s or so. I actually remember in the original commercials coming on ESPN, because they had this idea that I remember these commercials being, they were talking to guys, and the idea being that they were WNBA groupies, and they said what kind of players they were looking for. Like there was one guy, that's saying, I'm looking for a dominant power forward, and it was kind of the whole idea of the WNBA groupies. Again, we hadn't lost our minds yet, so you could joke about stuff like that back then. There was no future. There was not. It was an unprecedented thing. It was subsidized by the NBA. It has built up a following. Now, again, I don't know how many teams there were when they started, but they're up to 10 teams now. I got to say probably 12 to 15 people per team. So we have the best 150 players, women's players in the WNBA. It wasn't, when it started out, there wasn't necessarily the quality of the 150 when the league started out versus the quality that we are here right now is much, much different. And I use the example, Diana Taurasi is 41 years old. I saw a highlight. Looks like she can still ball pretty good. So when you realize that every year, if she's 21, 41 years old, what was she, probably 22, 23? She's probably got about 18 to 20 years in this league. Just think of that, maybe every year you add a couple of really, really, really good players. And then over the course of time, you have now built up this league where it goes to show how actually watered down other leagues are, because I do see that the girls that are out there, they all are bona fide players. Okay. At least they're, there's not, you watch college basketball sometimes, women's college basketball, that might have turned you off to watching the WNBA, because you do see that drop off there where when we have the top 0.01% of a certain competitive realm in one league, the drop off of what you're seeing in the next level. I'm always quick to point out, or was always quick to point out, you can look this shit up. Artie Lang, all right? Artie fucking Lang, when he was a fat, out of shape, drunken drug addict on the Howard Stern show, played a game of one-on-one basketball against, I think her name was Melissa Gravy or something. She was a starting guard on a Final Four women's basketball team. She needed to be bailed out by officials to beat Artie Lang in one-on-one basketball. Granted, if you watch the game, it was a little bit, Artie got hot from the outside, and that was, he went there, but really she was getting fouled out. She was getting foul calls in a game of one-on-one. Okay. You do not, I don't know when the last time you played basketball was. When I played basketball, and I'm not saying, I'm from the hard streets or anything like that, but I used to play a lot of basketball. I have always found that usually the person who committed the foul is the person who has to call the foul. We do play sometimes where people can call fouls on the opposing person. Usually it's becomes a point of pride that nobody wants to be the one to call the foul on that one. Sometimes you play and there's the guy that calls one ticky-tack foul and there's almost a fight that breaks out. So when the idea, when you see a play and people go, you don't know ball, I'm sorry, but if you put everybody's idea of what a foul is, it's always a matter of what your intended or what your desired outcome is how you see something, because there's no rhyme or reason to how some plays end up being called one way or some plays being called another. In some people's heads there are. I'm sure that in some cases they may be correct. But yeah, so we have now this really, really great league. Okay. It's gotten a lot better, but it still doesn't do anything for me. Okay. Now, I saw one person who I know he's a known activist type from ESPN. His name is LZ Granderson. And he phrased a question about that you need to do the work and ask yourself why you weren't watching the WNBA before, which is a leading way of saying there's something wrong with you if you weren't watching the WNBA. I got a really fucking simple question. I really wish he answered it for me, is that, would you ask an NFL fan the same question why he does not watch the XFL? No, you fucking wouldn't. Okay. There's a couple things going on in this one. If you watch basketball, if you're actually a hardcore basketball fan, there's a good chance by June you're burned the fuck out on watching it. Okay. You've been watching it since October. All right. I know that, you say that you love it. No matter how much you love something, you always want a little break from it. Okay. So again, XFL. I mean, there's not even the role of genders and races to be played in this. Why it's not as popular. It's just not as good of a product. Okay. Just flat and simple. It's not to say that these girls are not very, very good at what they do, but I'm sorry if I just get done watching if I get done watching an NBA Finals game and I put on an WNBA Finals game, it is horribly disappointing, the quality of play that I'm seeing from one to the other. It's the same way that if you watch college football on Saturday and then you watch NFL football on Sunday, you are blown away at the difference of quality from the quarterbacks. That does not make you a bad person. You know why I don't watch the fucking WNBA? Because I'm a baseball fan, okay? And it's not to say I don't like basketball. I love fucking basketball. But you should hear my gripes about the actual NBA. I used to watch basketball more than I watched fucking baseball. But you know what happened? The product started to suffer a little bit. I don't care. We're in this, the analytics era, and this is the best basketball I've ever played. I'm sorry. Watching the Celtics launch 42 threes a game will never, ever be entertaining. Watching people shoot a step back three because they've been told it's a better shot than taking a two is never going to be fucking entertaining. It looks great the 1 out of 5 times it goes in, but I challenge you right now to go to a basketball court, stand there and fire a jump shot, and then do a dribble and then step back, and then tell me how much harder it is to make that. Basically, when you're taking a step back three-pointer, which again, I see quite frequently in the NBA, You're just basically saying, I can't get by this guy. Let me just take a shitty shot. Now, if it's at the end of the shot clock, I get that. You don't want to get the shot clock violation. But chances are, if you can't get past your guy and he's in your face, that means pass the fucking ball. But the NBA has become this ISO hero ball shit that I don't really watch during the regular season, but I will watch casually during the playoffs. Now, does that make me a fucking horrible person? Okay, maybe I am just a giant racist because I like watching Dirk Nowitzki when he beat the 2011 Miami Heat. I'm sure that that's probably going to be on some people's minds in there. Or I just liked watching a great team, basketball team. I liked watching when a group of guys take on a group of individuals. It kind of seemed like where the Dallas Mavericks taking on that super heat team. That's fun to watch to me. Okay. It's not the same way for me anymore. I mean, realistically, if you wanted to ask me, most sports, this is maybe my old man on the clouds moment. Most sports have become fairly unwatchable to me I just don't understand of why we fix things that aren't broken necessarily, or too many times the strive to make things better makes things worse is kind of how I would say. So I kind of covered the NBA and all of that portion of this, and why again you should not have to feel guilty about watching the WNBA. But again, if I say something like that, it's automatically I'm a racist and I'm a sexist, which is pretty unfortunate because you know what I do actually like watching around this time of year? Have you ever seen the fucking college softball World Series? Holy fucking shit. I play softball. Those girls do things I could never fucking dream of. And I get it. The girls in the WNBA can probably do things I could never dream of on a basketball court. But I'm just saying of that. I don't know if there are guys in Major League Baseball that can make some of the plays that girls make in softball because it's such a different game. I like that it's not, hey, we're going to take a men's game and make it for girls. This is their own different game, okay? The strategy of softball is a little bit, they border on each other, but there's enough different. Albert Pujols, one of the best hitters of all time, could not get a hit off of Jenny Finch. I get it. They're just that much different, but that's why if you've ever seen a fucking actual college softball pitcher, all right, do you know what kind of bat speed you or what timing you need to have to fucking square one of those balls up? They're throwing a ball like 70 miles an hour from fucking 45 feet away, and it goes in the opposite motion of what you're conventionally used to if you've played baseball, or instead of a ball having drop, it has rise. And they're able to disguise how the ball comes out so much better. A dominant fucking softball pitcher, it's almost impossible to get a hit off of, let's just face it. I watched a play the other day where some girl made a diving stop from third base and then ripped the throw over to first to get the double play. And all I could think of was that there was those people that were from the cricket crowd that posted a shot of some guy making a similar looking play in cricket going, I wonder how many baseball players can do this. The answer is probably more than you care to, but I will watch the best of something. When I'm watching women's basketball, I am sorry, I'm not watching the best basketball players in the world. I am watching the best women's basketball players in America, which is to my next point on this one. The WNBA, it looks like, I feel like that they're trying to run before they've crawled even, because in the sense that the money is going to start coming in, but and you got to spend some money to make some money. I get that. I don't know how spending money on players who haven't necessarily, I don't want to say they haven't earned it, but it's a rookie coming into your league, which has existed for a long time, whether it be for racial reasons or not, is the reason why you have some extra cash flow potential coming in there. You're doing everything you can to ruin it, by the way, it seems like. Realistically, again, I hate to echo this one, but if you watch Jason Whitlock, I probably share some similar thoughts to him. I'm just not as extreme as him, but I'm also not trying to draw to quite the audience that he is. I do believe that he's a bit of a caricature of himself. And while I don't always agree with the man, I do respect somebody that at least explains their entire opinion, no matter how much I disagree with it. Because as long as you give me the information and the thought process behind why you arrived at the conclusion you did, all I can say is I respectfully disagree. But where was I going with that? I don't fucking know. I probably shouldn't talk about Jason Whitlock actually, but all right, well, lost there for a second. Hey, this happens sometimes. I don't have much of a attention span even for listening to myself, so I probably don't even know the thoughts there. But okay, so Whitlock. Oh yeah, so where I'm going with this one is that at some point the NBA is going to expand, the WNBA, they're at 10 teams right now. I think that now that there's the possibility, not that people have already gone batshit crazy trying to get their kids college athletic scholarships, and with NIL money and all that stuff, it's probably going to get worse. But I'd imagine that the rise in popularity of women's basketball is going to go more because now they actually can see a profession in it going forward. As somebody who played lacrosse, again, I'm going to hit back on this one. I played lacrosse. I loved it. When they came out with their first professional leagues, they had the indoor lacrosse league and they had the NLL. I didn't really fucking watch it, okay? And I ate, breathed, and slept lacrosse when I was under the age of 18 years old, basically. When I first started watching those games, they did the thing where there was the college game, which was probably the highest level and the most competitive level of lacrosse. And they altered some of the rules to make it more aesthetically, and it just wasn't as good of a game to me. This is me, someone who loved lacrosse, that decided to say no to a professional league. So it's not crazy if you like a sport to say no to a professional league. Again, I already established that too with how the NFL is one of the most popular, if not the most popular league, or it's definitely the most popular league in America. But I don't believe when you look at the XFL that you're really quite getting. It's okay that the people leave that one alone. But if it's different genders, it becomes that you're an asshole, basically. Um, I want to see, because, as a baseball fan, I do know that Shohei Ohtani is married to a Japanese basketball player. I am curious what the coverage or what the temperature in the room is in other countries concerning their women's basketball leagues. Is this you're an awful person if you don't watch and support this theory that kind of goes on out there? I mean, I noticed I watched some highlights of Shohei's wife. She looked like she was shooting in front of a half empty high school gym. I mean, and that's fucking Japanese Jesus's wife doesn't have fans. Okay. So are they okay with that? I'm not insinuating anything. I'm legitimately asking these questions. So if anybody knows, feel free to drop me a comment how they go. But where I am going with this is that I am sure, I mean, I know that when we go over to play in the Olympics, that the U.S. women's team, we could probably have our backup squad out there, and from what I understand, still beat the rest of the world. That does not mean that there's not a couple women across the globe that are not good enough or just as good as any American players. So I ask this: if all this money is coming into the league, or the WNBA is going to be getting some money coming in the influx, and maybe we start expanding teams and we start adding teams to this league, which means we need more players. Is there actually, again, just legitimately asking this question, is there an international player that you think is going to want to come and play in this league when we see the product that we are representing to the rest of the world? I mean, perception is everything in reality, the eye of the consumer. Around this world, I don't think that America has the greatest reputation going these days. I will often notice that whenever I see a video of violence or reckless behavior going on in this fine country of ours, you can see in the comments what other people around the world think about what they're seeing. So when we're showing that this is the highest level of women's basketball, and the coverage has been turned into a race war. I mean, fuck, let's even go to the NBA here. I truly believe Nikola Jokic does not like the fact that he has to come to America to fucking play basketball during the regular season. I think that he looks at it as that this is where I can make the most money. This is technically the highest level of basketball. But once he became the part of a fucking race debate that he had no part of because he's a good basketball player and somebody thought he should win the MVP over Joel Embiid, you can sense that he pretty much just doesn't give a shit. He just wants to go back to fucking his home country, which I believe is Serbia or Croatia, and fucking play with his horses and fucking drink beer. That's totally fine. I don't blame the guy for that. I don't fault them. I mean, in fact, if you really look at it too, by the way, in the NBA, we are becoming more international. In fact, as a baseball player or baseball fan, I, I believe that the majority of players are not from America anymore at this point, or the gap is closing by the day. And not for nothing, it even seems like that a lot of these younger players from other countries are even just better dudes. Maybe that isn't true. Wander Franco may have ruined that one for a few people. Don't judge everybody by bad apple, but I guess it's just dangerous that we have as much contact with people. I mean, again, I'm the pot calling the kettle black here. I'm just some fucking idiot with a day off from work right now that's got a webcam that has a platform that he can post stuff to that people might see. But again, I don't think that people like, we do have some requirements, and I'm not trying to turn this into a full blown batshit crazy conversation. like there are some requirements to get a gun in this country, I think. I mean, some in some states. I mean, I know the state that I live in, there's a little bit. Can we maybe have that for having social media, or you should have to like, pass some time? No, that's the dangerous stuff. That's kind of suppressing your free speech. But you shouldn't have a right to be an idiot, I guess, is where I'm going with that. You have the right to say anything you want to say without fear of consequences. You being an idiot should be a consequence. There should be something to be paid for that. I'm not yeah, fine line. Which actually that's the other thing too, is that in all of the WNBA, I hate to go political with this one, but this is almost. I'll just flat begin this one. I mentioned the Whitlock thing earlier on this, and I said that he's a little bit more extreme with how his analogies are. When you start saying things that you or some thoughts and theories and reactions that you have this stuff, it does look like lowest common denominator stuff. But I am quick to point out that why is it that like in February, Jason Whitlock said all of this stuff was going to happen exactly the way it's happened. That's always the thing about unpopular takes or accepting the harsh truth of things is that there's stuff that has been speculated on for a very, very, very long time. And then when it finally comes to fruition, you're an asshole for remembering that somebody said something and then it came true. Like you have to open your eyes to some shit a little bit. Um, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm just able to rant and rave, and I would like to have conversations and discussions on this one. Again, I've just noticed that whenever I'm in any conversation on social media, being a white guy with a picture of you at Busch Stadium, most people they've already pegged you into a hole on this one. I even have this whole thing of that again, just because people see things they want to see them. I have that when I am in the area that I live in, I have time when I tell people I'm from the place that I'm from and I've lived the life that I have lived. And they're kind of look at me and I'm not saying I'm from the streets or anything like that. I'm just saying you would probably not think the background matches the fucking current product as much as it does. People, I don't get upset about that. I get it. Yeah, it makes sense sometimes. But there's some coherence in some of this shit that I'm saying. I want to say. I mean, again, this is why it would be good if I had a producer, somebody that maybe could steer me on track here, or someone that maybe forced me to be a little more organized. It's really tough to be. I'm not saying that I'm not self-motivated, but I just, I guess I just got tired of reading the same shit over and over again, and just I'm not a keyboard warrior. I like to have the spoken word, and I encourage. I mean, I'd love to have a conversation and discussion, not an argument. Which that's always the problem, is that all of these things turn into arguments. There is, and I'm not saying I'm 100% right about everything. I mean, that's kind of one of the big things we need to go out there. The biggest idiot in a broken clock is right twice a day. That's always an expression. Now, I am always quick to point out with that one, if the broken clock is still moving, it's never right. Think on that one, put that in your pipe and smoke it. And I think this also just kind of expands upon a deeper analogy that I've been kind of toying around with in my head that I think I'll end on with this. I'm not going to end. Who knows where I end? I just keep going sometimes. We use this litmus test in society that we can all agree, if you're a human being or a person, that if you go to a grocery store and you don't put your cart back into the cart corral, that you're a piece of shit. It's pretty much universally understood. By the way, I was somebody who was once hit by a fucking car when I was unloading. I worked as a cart boy at a grocery store and was hit by a car by someone who didn't pay attention to the fact that there was a young man just trying to make an honest fucking buck, probably minimum wage at the time or something. I don't know. I don't really care. But yeah, we say that it automatically makes you a shitty person. And I agree. It's a good indicator that's going on there. But the flip side of that one on is that it doesn't mean that you're a good person if you put your grocery cart back into the corral. I go based on this is that, I go to a grocery store where I very rarely ever see a cart ever not in the cart corral. But yet, why is it that I, in the same area, am always encountered by the dregs of society? I'm still surrounded by shitty people a lot. I mean, let's just think on that one. I also think the issue that, again, what happens with social media and a lot of the conversations on this, I think that there are probably more people who have a somewhat rational viewpoint on this stuff than there are. Let's face it, we always judge groups of people by their worst members. It's an unfortunate way of going about things, but I'm pretty sure it's going on as long as the globe's been spinning. But realistically, let's just put that there's a spectrum out there, and there is 100% on the spectrum. We probably focus on the 10% of the extremes. And in the middle, there is 80% of people that are not very far from each other. I am sure that there is, in that other end of the spectrum, it's really probably about this far, but 80% of the people are between there. But then the other 10% are this far out. And unfortunately, we only really react and listen to them. There are probably more people who are reasonable than we care to admit, but nobody likes to listen to them. That's boring and unexciting. There's no controversy. There's no who wants somebody. Nobody likes to talk to somebody that agrees with them. We want to fucking argue with people. It's weird. Human beings are fucking weird creatures. Okay, we're social, but yet we're territorial. We're like think about that. Like you want to talk like I guess I'll maybe the shark has jumped. I am trying to think of. I think I had one last good one there that I lost, or that's me saying that I think it's good. I don't know. I just wish that I'm just really curious to see how this all plays out. It's going to. I just want to see the experiment of if Caitlin Clark would. Let's just say that Caitlin Clark. I don't want this to happen. I will say this right now. I do not want this to happen. But let's just say that Caitlin Clark got seriously injured on a foul in a game and was unable to play. And let's say it's like something where she wasn't even able to travel with the team. What happens to that league? What happens to the crowds? And here's the other one going on too, is that you can definitely tell that there are people that are not sports people that are just using this as a topic to jump on. I will be quick to say that yesterday, I mean, actually, this is where I was going on. Caitlin bringing on herself. Barstool Sports, Dave Portnoy, I love you. You really, really, really have a hard time not looking a bit racist. I do say that. I do understand when somebody does push that, it's one of those, looks like a duck, smells like a duck, but I'm sure that he is not. But again, your actions, his words are speaking louder than his actions, but sometimes the actions of using those words, as an ex-girlfriend once told me, can be something. I believe that he knows the response he's going to get when he says something that he says, just like I believe that Angel Reese is very well aware of what the reaction she's going to get when she says something that she says. I want to say that I would hope that she has some type of PR crew and I want to say that they might be feeding this into her or gassing it up a little bit. That's just a speculation of mine, but I do think that somebody that is built up this presence. I mean, again, because we can hate on what she said yesterday about the special whistle thing, but the fact of the matter is, here I am, a guy who doesn't give a shit about the WNBA, recording content that other people might consume. And it's all that has been being consumed in basically the past 12 hours. Way to make Father's Day about a woman, I must say. No, that was just therefore. But then, no, yeah, that's right. There's people that are like, I've seen the movement that she needs to sue the media outlets, or that, prayers for Angel. She was at a concert last night in Chicago having the time of the fucking time of her life. I don't know if you're aware of this, or at least it's always been the way I've understood this, but I've always kind of under the impression that most athletes do not seek out the things that are said about them. They actually make it a point to try to avoid them. So when Caitlin Clark gets asked about her name being used as a symbol of white supremacy or whatever the hell it was there, which by the way was complete bullshit. Yeah, I don't think that she really does keep up on the fucking idiocy that's being put out there. It wouldn't be a great way of doing this. I swear that people think that these girls go from the courts to their hotel rooms or their apartments, and then they're just on their phone the entire time, just scrolling everything that's read about them. I don't think that that's how that goes down. But yeah, I mean, I figured, let's expand out there. Let's, put it out there again. Don't watch the WNBA, so I will be the first to admit that everything I had is just what I see that's out there. But that's just perception is reality, and that's the reality that I perceive that is out there. And I will also say too that when going back on the Portnoy point, there's being way too much made about the foul that Angel Reese committed yesterday. I compared the analogy to It's as if like when in baseball you have two teams that have known issues. Sometimes before the game is started, both benches are issued a warning. And then you'll have, I mean, let's face it, when you're playing, when pitchers are throwing a baseball, every now and again, one gets away from them. You will have times where it made no sense for a guy to get hit, where a pitch does come inside or it does hit somebody. And because those warnings were issued before the game, that pitcher gets ejected from there. That's not what happened in the sense of Angel Reese. I mean, here's the thing. What she did yesterday was a flagrant foul, but I do not believe that it was by intent. I think that what happens is that they are fierce competitors and rivals. And sometimes when you try too hard, you make mistakes. I will say that she is, if you watch a freeze frame, she is looking at the ball and reaching for the ball, but was trying too hard. And what happens when you try too hard? You lose a little bit of control. Trust me, if she wanted to hit her in the fucking head, she could have hit her a lot harder. Okay. I'll just leave it at that one. I didn't think that was so bad. But again, I don't think that this is where I was going back and forth is that Caitlin is not always, I know fake nice. I know fake nice. She's, again, she's probably a nice person outside of the courts, but I know when somebody is a competitive fucking firecracker. And she does it in very subtle ways. It's always just like, do yourself a favor on this one. I love now the NBA players that are retired have podcasts and you can really get some good insight on there. Listen to the way that people talk about Tim Duncan. If you're someone that just watched basketball, you would assume that Tim Duncan is the best human being. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad human being by any stretch, but you have never seen words come out of his mouth. It's just always this kind of, I'm here to do my job, little blank stares on his face. Then why don't you listen to what fucking some of the players that he played against in his lifetime have to say about him? He wasn't over the top in any ways in his mannerisms, but he knew how to get underneath a player's skin a little bit. Caitlin knows how to do that. And just watch a little closer for that. Just watch things with open eyes. I actually should say, don't do that because I cannot encourage you to watch something that I am not going to watch myself. But anyways, that was what I had here for the Scho-Zone. Little bit outside the topic. Thank you for anybody who made it all the way through with this one. I hope to maybe get some new listeners. Honestly, if you want to fucking dislike this, if you want to tell me what a fucking asshole I am, you want to tell me that I'm just a fucking know-it-all white guy, whatever you want to fucking do. The way that the WNBA is operating is that if the eyeballs are on here, whether it's for good reasons or for bad, they're on there. I don't want to run my show like this or the content that I do. I don't want to be a hot take person. I just want to take that I have been thinking upon something for about a dozen hours or so, or I mean, I slept for a little bit in the between there. But rather than me writing things out and trying to perfect the perfect craft, I just finally took the bullet points in my head and spoke them out here and just spit all of this garbage upon you. Which thank you for tuning in. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, and I look forward to giving a better effort next time for you. Thank you and have a nice day.